PCGamer has dropped an absurd amount of news. With the new PCGamer magazine that I have just now purchased, I have gotten much more information on the release of Path of Exile's 2 early access, and it's actually starting out with a banger. Namely, the person responsible for the PCGamer article, Dominic Tarason, was at GGG and was playing the new version that we're going to get on December 7th. And in that version, he was, and I quote, limited to half of the main story and 6 of the planned 12 classes. We actually will not get access to Druid and Huntress. That leaves us with 6 playable classes for the early access, which is going to be Mercenary, Monk, Ranger, Sorceress, Warrior, and Witch. Right now, we don't know how we get access or when we get access to the other 6 classes. I hope they are going to trickle in over the course of the early access, maybe once every month, once every 2 months, who knows, something like that. On top of that, Dominic also says that the difficulty curve has been smoothed out, although he has played the last time in LA, which was extremely punishing, where you maybe remember they did not get any Flask charges from killing small monsters, so that's definitely a much older version than what I have played at Gamescom, for example. Another very nice tidbit from the PCGamer article is, and I quote again, uncut skill gems drop once every few minutes during the second act. So we are actually going to get quite a lot of skill gems, which was a little bit of my worry, where you basically have to make every decision super count, and the new player experience that we're trying to hone in on with Path of Exile 2 might be a little bit frustrating if you only would have gotten a small amount of uncut skill gems. But this is going to solve the issue for me. I think that's super fine for the new players, so they can try out all the stuff. I've seen in Act 1 there's already 2 spots where a uncut skill gem seems to be popping out every time in all the videos that I've seen. So it looks like there won't be any problem getting the skill gems that you need. There's going to be much more Path of Exile 2 content coming up on this YouTube channel. If you don't want to miss out on that, make sure to subscribe. Then another point by Dominic Tarason is that he says that it is 9 to 8 hours per act for new players. That is also a quote from the PCGamer article. So we will actually have to see how that is going to turn out, because that would basically be at least 50 hours for the campaign for new players, mandatory for every character. I am not sure how that is supposed to be new player friendly when they want to try out another alt, for example, and then only get to the end game. This is something I'm very curious about, and I'm really curious to see how that is going to play out in the future. 50 hours for a new player that is just interested in the campaign is probably fun, but how is it going to look like for the casual blaster, so to say, if they have to play 24, 25 hours for the campaign per character every season, and they maybe want to play 1 or 2 alts, then there's going to be a lot of time spent in the campaign. But there's going to be another quote that I have further in the end of the video, where we are going to go more into the duration of the campaign. Next up, we actually have, and spoiler warning, more infos on Act 6, and I quote again, around half the length of previous acts, but will crank up the stakes, spectacle, and be more than a little apocalyptic. So there is definitely going to be something happening similar to the PoE campaign, where we just destroy basically everything that there was. Very important here is that Act 6 is supposed to be around half the length of the previous act. So the 50 hours of gameplay that Jonathan said in the Sony gameplay footage was actually kind of similar to what here the PCGamer article says. So we will have to see how that is going to turn out in the end for the casual player. Next up, in the journalist version, they had access to the 3rd act a little bit more than we have seen on the current available videos. Namely, he had access to Act 1, which was the forest, Act 2, which is the desert, and then Act 3 is the Val Temple. So that might be very similar to the footage that we have seen at ExileCon, where they had the two-man couch co-op going on together with Mark Roberts. So that is probably something along those lines. There's also more information on when we are getting the remaining 3 acts for the Path of Exile 2 campaign. And I quote again, "The story is pausing on a cliffhanger until Path of Exile 2 leaves early access." So if we can actually trust what Dominic Tarason from PCGamer is saying and writing here in his article, then we will not get access to Act 4, 5, or 6 during early access, which is probably not going to be what everyone has hoped for, but on the other hand is actually something that might preserve the exclusivity and the freshness of the campaign when it finally launches in its 1.0 state. When it comes to bosses, there is also another thing that I need to quote, and I quote again, "Some bosses are due later in the early access release." So this probably has something to do with either more maps becoming available, therefore more bosses becoming available, or he's kind of contradicting himself in the PCGamer article, where we might actually have access to Act 4, 5, and 6 during the later stages of the early access. So we will definitely have to see how that is going to work out. From how I read the whole thing, it just basically has to be that some of the 100 bosses are just going to come into later via maps, and it's definitely sounding like we are not getting Act 4, 5, or 6 during the early access period at all. Super cool feature is also mentioned in the article, and I quote again, "There was even some talk of letting players sell items to one another through trading NPCs in their hideouts." So this is going to be something very important to keep going from Settlers to Path of Exile 2. I think Faustus has been the absolute MVP, and I can't wait to actually have the full auction house supported, not only for currency, but also for items in the hideout itself. One more amazing tidbit in the article is the duration that Mark Roberts needs to speedrun through the first 3 acts that are available in early access, from what the article tells us. And Mark Roberts is actually has actually been racing a lot in his past, so he is a very competitive and competent player, and he actually takes under 5 hours to complete the 3 early access acts campaign, therefore cutting down the estimated 50 hours for the whole 6 acts by quite a lot. As we already heard, Act 6 is going to be half of the 9 to 10 hours, so people say 5 hours, but as you can see right here, Mark Roberts actually already does the first 3 early access acts in under 5. So there is definitely a lot of speed run potential. According to these numbers, when Act 1 to Act 3 takes him around 5 with quite a lot of practice probably, then there is going to be a 7, 8, 9 hour campaign in the books, and then we're also going to find a lot more stuff that is going to tremendously cut down the time necessary to go through the campaign. I'm really curious how far the community is going to push the boundaries of the campaign and trying to speedrun this, but this is a first pointer where we can see the first 3 early access acts are completed in under 5 hours by Mark Roberts. And then probably the biggest news coming from the PCGamer article by Dominic Tarason is actually the following quote: "The plan is to limit players to a single slot each for health and mana flasks, with more capacity on both, and introducing a new set of trinket slots that provide utilitarian buffs like automatically activating freeze, bleed, and stun cures." So there you have it. The bottom left hand side of your UI is probably not going to look like that anymore. We are definitely moving towards a 2-flask system with Path of Exile 2 that will both have more capacity, and then you will have a trinket system that will automatically cure you from bleed, stun, or freeze. I am not so certain how I am liking the feature because they have been marketing the flasks as reactive in PoE 2, which is now completely disregarded by giving us the trinkets that are automatically going to solve the issue. I am not so sure how I like that thing. Probably have to play to get my own opinion on the thing, but I'm extremely curious what you think is the absolute biggest part of news coming from the PCGamer article. I'm extremely excited to see what you guys say. I'm gonna be reading the comments and responding to you guys. Is it the Flask charges? Is it that Mark Roberts can speedrun the first 3 acts in 5 hours? Is it going to be that we only have 3 acts or 6 classes at the early access start? Please let me know down in the comments. And if you like content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also, I'm live right now for the Settlers reboot. Check out the Twitch that is also linked down in the description below, and I'll see you next time.